welcome to the African Novel Review Space. I'm Noye, and today we're reviewing Maik Nwosu's The Book of Everything. Maik Nwosu is an award-winning Nigerian author. He's also a professor of English at the University of Denver, Colorado, United States. The Book of Everything is his fourth novel. His first three novels are Invisible Chapters, Alpha Song, and A Gecko's Farewell. His fourth novel, The Book of Everything, was published in March this year, that's 2025. And it's a migration fiction that revolves around the life of the protagonist, Ileka, who is a professor in the US. He gets this message that confuses him from some lawyers in South Africa who tell him to come and inherit his grandfather's property, that they just buried his grandfather 4 months ago. And the confusion is that Ileka did not meet his grandfather. In fact, his grandfather died 11 years before his birth. And then for some people to call him in his adult stage as a full professor to come and inherit the property of his grandfather that they just buried 4 months ago sounds like a fairy tale. So he becomes confused, and from that very first page of the novel, we see that the world of the novel is disjointed. And I quote, "My grandfather came back from the dead 44 years, 4 months, and 4 days after his funeral." So that sounds like a fairy tale. This information now injects into the world of this novel at least 2 time zones. We have the linear time and the supernatural time. And then Ileka decides to embark on a search to dig into the life of this grandfather. And this introduces the journey motif into this novel. So he has to travel from South Africa to Nigeria, his home travel from the US to Nigeria before going to South Africa. So that is that. The novel has four parts. The first part is in the US, where he gets this information. The second part is in Nigeria, where he goes to interview his family to really find out about his grandfather. So when he gets to Nigeria, he discovers that even though there's a grave that designates where the resting place of his grandfather is, that the corpse of his grandfather was never put in the grave. The man disappears from home, and then after many years, they decide to have some kind of burial ceremony to give a closure to the family. So that's how they have a grave for him. And then he also discovers that his grandfather had a King Lazarus project. The name of this project comes from the Lazarus in the Bible that Christ raised from the dead. So the importance of this project is just to raise people back to life. And he established this project immediately after the war. People were still traumatized by the experiences of the war, the loss, the grief, and all of that. And so he opens this charity healthcare center where people come to get healed for free. And then he also acts like a counselor who listens to them. They pour out their heart, and then he tries to help them to start life all over again. So this is the information that Ileka gets from his family in Nigeria. And then he goes to South Africa. In South Africa, he interacts with the lawyers of his grandfather, his maid, and the community that he lived in. And from the interactions, he discovers that his grandfather was really good to them. So he gets confused, like, why would his grandfather abandon his family to now go to different parts of the world to help victims of natural disasters and things like that? I mean, he can combine the two, so he's so confused about his grandfather's decision to just abandon his family like that. And from the interactions he has with the community that his grandfather lived in, he discovers that they call his grandfather the monk or the priest. And now this priesthood is not the one that is ordained in an Orthodox church or a traditional shrine, but is the title that they give to him because of the kind of services he renders to them. They feel that it is what priests do in the lives of people that he did for them. So that's how he got the title of a priest. And then the fourth part is after his search and digging in South Africa, he returns back to the US. So the novel, the themes of the novel revolves around or focus on identity / self-discovery, priesthood, love and friendship, and then gaps in human relationships, which is part of the human condition. So in this review, I'm going to focus on priesthood and gaps in human relationship. For gaps in human relationship, I'm going to explore that from three parts of the novel. The first is in the communities that are established in Houston, US. So the novel tries to represent the kind of lives that Nigerians in Houston live. They form communities and try to replicate the kind of communal way of life that is existent in Nigeria. So they attend social gatherings, parties, funerals. They are there for one another. But regardless of this communal way of life, many of the marriages collapse. Many of the husbands kill, do terrible things to their wives. And they have this big man in Houston who has a big African shop. People come to him to buy on credit and pay later. And then after some time, they begin to tell him about their marital problems. And he tries to help them to fix these problems. But the thing is, many of the marriages that he tries to help to come back to life do not. They crash. And then he tells his wife that the reason is because people don't actually tell them all the information about probably what is causing the irritation in their marriages. So they tell them a little and then they leave probably the most important part. And because they don't have any information about the most important part, it gives gaps in the information that is given. And then the little that they have, they cannot use it to solve the problems of these couples. And so the marriages crash. Then the second is Ileka's grandfather's abandonment of his family. He abandons his family when his last son is 12 years old. And when Ileka goes to South Africa, he discovers that his grandfather was really good to people. From many of the people he interviewed, they tell him that his grandfather was seen in Bangladesh, he was seen in India, he was seen in Ethiopia. And he tried to really help people. So the confusion is, why would a man with that kind of reputation abandon his own family to go and help people outside? So that is the gap that he tries to feel or find out. Then the third one is Ileka's marriage. Ileka has a very good marriage, a very good relationship with his wife Ella. They are friends, they are very compatible. But when he returns from South Africa, he walks in on his wife and his best friend on his matrimonial bed, and he's so devastated. So the unfaithfulness of his wife is something that he cannot understand. They have a very good marriage, they love each other. And when he looks into the past to try to see if he could find any reasons for that unfaithfulness, he's not able to see anything. So that is also a gap. Now, one of the reviewers of this novel, Olu Korode Yishao, in the Lagos review of this novel, says that the part of Ella, her unfaithfulness, is a twist that he didn't see coming. Now, when I read this novel the first time, I also felt that, wow, this is not consistent with Ella's character. Because if you want to show this kind of thing, then there has to be some kind of logic. And that logic will be seen in the character development of that particular person. So, but in her character development, we don't see any trace that she's going to be unfaithful. But the logic of the novel is the explanation for this behavior. Right from the very beginning, the world of the novel is disjointed. We see this in the marriages that crash. We see this in Ileka's grandfather's abandonment of his family. And it has to culminate in something. And most of the time, it culminates in the life of the major character. So that is my explanation for this gap. And so you look at it, these are things that one cannot explain. So the novel is big on talking about those gaps in life that make life mysterious. So this is part of it. Then I want to use the concept of priesthood to explain Ileka's grandfather's own gaps. So in this novel, the concept of priesthood is there, and it shares similarities with the concept of priesthood that we find in the life of Jesus Christ in the Bible. So in literature, figures like that are called savior figures. And some of the characteristics that we find in their lives include: one, they will maybe have gift of prophecy or healing. They suffer a lot. They do a lot of good works. They help people. Then in the case of Christ, he had immaculate conception. He was crucified, buried, and then he stayed in the grave for 3 days before he resurrected and went back to heaven. So his resurrection brought redemption to Christians. In Ileka's grandfather's life, some of the things he has in common with the pattern we have in the Bible is that sometime in his village before he disappeared, there was an epidemic that was killing a lot of people. So people were moving away from that part of Isiani. And Ileka's grandfather goes to that place. He inspects the afflicted bodies, and then he goes into the forest, spends 3 days in the forest, 3 nights in the forest, and then he comes out with a cure. So the cure erases that disease from that village, and people, are okay again. So if you look at it, spending 3 nights in the forest is similar to Christ's time in the grave, and then his resurrection. So his coming out also is some kind of resurrection that brings redemption to the people of Isiani. Then the second example is that the story of the woman with the issue of blood. The woman with the issue of blood went to where Christ was, touched the hem of his garment, and she was made whole. And at that moment, Christ said that strength had left his body. And his disciples were surprised, like, why are you saying who touched you in a crowd like this? But Christ said somebody touched him. And then the woman with the issue of blood came out and said she was the one that touched him. And Christ said he knew that because strength left his body. So if we now go to Ileka's grandfather's own experience, one of the people that interacted with Ileka in South Africa, they told him that his grandfather appeared in Ethiopia when there was famine, there was drought for a period of 2 years. So he just appears there from nowhere, and he enters into one of the farmlands and he calls down rain. But then they notice that each time he calls down rain, that strength, a lot of strength used to leave his body. So it's similar to Christ saying that strength left his body. So savior figures, when they do that kind of healing work, it takes away strength from their body. So that's also a form of sacrifice, where he has to use his energy, his life to save people. It's like pouring out himself to save people. Christ also was crucified as a form of sacrifice. And then another thing in Ileka's grandfather's life that is a sacrifice is his abandonment of his family. Like, he feels that the calling he has is more than just being a biological father. So he abandons his family, even though he provides for them financially. He hands them over to his lawyer, but does not tell his lawyer that he's going to disappear. So when he disappears, the lawyer understands and then begins to take care of his family. So then the differences between the pattern of priesthood we have in the Bible and in this novel is that Christ had immaculate conception, he died, resurrected, and went back to heaven. But in this novel, the priest does not have immaculate conception. He's just born the normal way that every other person is born. And then when he dies, he reconnects or comes back to his people through his grandson. And we see this when Ileka goes to South Africa. There's a wall in his grandfather's room that has a lot of symbolic objects on it. And part of the symbolic objects include pictures from home, and then like spiritual items that are associated with their shrine or their deity in their village. And there's also a picture of a sunset and some raindrops on the wall. And then when Ileka studies the wall, he begins to understand things about his grandfather. It's like he's communicating with his grandfather through the wall. And so many of the questions or answers to the questions he's not able to get from the interviews he conducts, he gets from just studying the wall. And also during that time, he has a dream. And in that dream, he sees his grandfather moving from the forest to different places, interacting with people, helping them. Then at some point in the state of that dream, it will be Ileka himself who is interacting with these people, helping them, doing the kind of work that his grandfather does. And then at other time, it will be his grandfather. So in that dream, is like his grandfather is moving in and out of him. Like he is his grandfather is also him. So in the Bible, we have like Trinity, we have 3, but here we have just 2, him and his grandfather. So he's separate from him and also like one with him. So that's what that dream means. So that's how the cyclical rebirth or returning happens in the novel. So the man pours himself back into his grandson and returns back to his people through his grandson. So in this novel, the priests are meant to live among the people and interact with them and help them. So if the old one dies, he returns through this cyclical rebirth. Then for the journey motive, we know that in literature, journey motives are meant to help the protagonist or whoever embarks on that journey to become more mature and transform in a positive way because of the experiences they encounter and their attempt to try to like solve those experiences. They become tougher and get more experience in life. So in Ileka's case, the final test is when he walks in on his wife and his best friend, you know, on his matrimonial bed. The normal Ileka would have like killed two of them at once because he has anger issues. But he sees them and he stands there for some time. He doesn't talk. He's just watching them and taking in the whole thing. And then when his voice finally returns, he tells his wife it is finished. Now he explains that the reason he does not act in his normal way is that at that moment, raindrops from his grandfather's walls actually descend on him. He feels the raindrops on his skin, and so he has some kind of peace in him. That's why he does not act like a lion in that moment. So from this we know that the journey motif actually brings about something transformative and positive in the life of Ileka. So from here we see that, or my reading is that he has been activated as a priest, you know, because he's able to use, instead of using that strength that he gets when he's angry to do something destructive, he's able to control it. So now that journey to find out about his grandfather brings about his own self-discovery. Then under language, I like the way that Nwosu uses language in the novel. He uses language to designate setting. So there are three settings: the US, Nigeria, and South Africa. When you come into the Nigerian part like Lagos, you will know it's Nigeria because of the code switching between standard English and pidgin English. So people just code switch like that in Nigeria, in major cities where you have a lot of people coming from different cultures and speaking different languages. And then also, he also uses the Igbo language to always express the proverbs from Ileka's uncle. Ileka's uncle Ibe likes to use a lot of proverbs to talk and express himself, but those proverbs are written in the Igbo language. So that way the full meanings of the proverbs will not be lost, because the English language may not be able to fully express the meanings in such proverbs. And then in South Africa, you see them code mixing between English words and South African local languages. So that's how you know you are in South Africa, or that Ileka is in South Africa when you're reading the text. And then for US, they just speak standard English. So that's how he uses language to designate setting. Then finally, the novel is a riveting read. It's something that when you pick it up, you will not drop it till you finish reading it. If you like romance, if you like romantic novels, the story of Ella and Ileka is a very beautiful story. The only thing is that you're going to get angry with Ella for spoiling the whole show. And then if you are a budding writer, you want to learn how to inject subtexts into your works, this is a good resource for you. Then if you like to philosophize about life, about how mysterious life is, this is also a novel that will help you to think deeply about that kind of thing. So go ahead, order your copy today, read, and let me know if this review has been helpful. Like and share the video. Thanks for watching. Until next time, goodbye.